Hey YouTube, and welcome back to C32 Gaming. Alright, so today I want to talk about Xbox codename Scarlet, or Xbox 2020, I think a lot of people have been calling it too. Let's just dive right in. A lot of the speculation, and I think this probably goes without saying, is whether or not there's more than one model. It's going to be a 4K 60 machine, like 90% of the time. There's always going to be outlier cases in games that are unoptimized or just very demanding. You know, we're not going to see every single game run at 4K 60. I think we're still going to see a lot of options in terms of a more locked frame rate, higher graphic settings turned up and stuff like that. But I think for the most part what we're going to see is a difference in graphical settings from like the X right now. So in terms of PC presets, we're seeing a lot of a high, sometimes highest setting presets on some of the X games. But I think with the next console, we're going to see a lot more of the ultra high, lots of high settings. Not a lot of stuff's going to be turned down. It's going to be a lot more comparable to what, not ultra high end, but like the higher end of mid to high end PCs that we see now. We're going to be seeing 4K resolutions, 60 frames per second a lot of the time to that. But a lot of that I think is to be expected. Like that's what they need to do. Anything less than that, they're going to have a problem when it comes to being the most powerful hardware out there if they want to keep that crown. Alright, now on to this two different consoles thing. I feel like this is talked about at the start of every generation. I know Phil dropped the little consoles thing there that made it sound like there might be two. I'm in the camp that they might be just prototyping more than one to see what the final end product is going to be. I really don't think, because this happens every time where people are like, yeah, two SKUs, two different ones, one for the hardcore, one for the people who don't really who are more casual, they don't want to spend as much money. And every time it's talked about, it never happens, and it's always talked down on too, like it's not going to end well. It never works out right if you split the console up right at the start. But if they do, I just want to entertain the idea for a second. Two SKUs. What could two SKUs possibly be? The high-end one, and I'm going to talk about other things too later that might be thrown into these consoles, not necessarily like the high-end one versus the low-end one or whatever you want to call it. But the high-end one we already kind of talked about. In my opinion, if we do get two different SKUs, I don't think the internal specs are going to be too different. There's going to be something else that separates them. But the higher end one, we already talked about, it's going to be a 4K 60 machine most of the time. It's going to have that 4K Blu-ray player, maybe some other crazy feature we don't know about yet. But yeah, that's going to be the higher end one. The lower end one, or at least like if there's only one, that's the base one. But the lower end one, that's where things are going to be a little bit different. The obvious answer is a diskless Xbox. No disk drive, no drive in there. That cuts cost right there, like $100 easy. Boom. $400 console versus a $500 console. That one I see being the most feasible. A lot of people are going digital these days, and I think as long as they make people like very aware of the difference, like this one doesn't have a 4K Blu-ray player or any player of any kind, this higher end one does, then that might be okay. I just think that's, I don't know. I don't see it as being a good idea. I don't think they can sell people on it that easily outside of the hardcore. The next thing I think people are speculating about is a box that has minimal hardware and is going to be a streaming box, something that utilizes this streaming service that they've been teasing. The only way I see that working is if they do something like Nvidia's doing, where you can purchase your games in the cloud and stream whatever game you buy to your box. Because if you're just limited to things that are in Game Pass, it's not going to work. That's horrible idea. That limited number of games is not going to fly. That or Game Pass library just like blows up tenfold before then. Like, even then though, I don't think a strictly streaming box is a good idea. It's something that can just be put on other devices as an app. So I don't think they would manufacture a whole set of hardware when they can just utilize other people's hardware to achieve that. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, more than one SKU to me doesn't seem like a good idea. Because then at that point, what do? Are you going to make a discless Xbox and then have it also have better streaming features? Are you going to have a streaming box that has a 4K drive in it? Are you going to have a streaming box that has no 4K drive in it? Like, are you basically making like an Xbox 4K Blu-ray player that supports like apps at that point, you know? Like, how many of these different combinations of SKUs are we going to get instead of just 2, you know? Like, at that point, are we going to have 3 or 4? I know that sounds a little ridiculous, and I'm kind of like, I might be blowing it out of proportion a little bit, but like, that's the thing, is like, where do you stop? Like, what 2 or 3 like are acceptable? Like, what combination of them do you need? That's why I think you need to just stick to one, and if you want to do streaming, you can put that on other things. I think the only thing that would work are like two exact same models with exact same specs minus the drive, like a discless one. And I don't know, even then, like, it sounds good on paper, but it's like, it makes it a really weird choice when you're purchasing them, because you're like, I could save like $100 now, but then you might regret that later. Like in the future, like with back compat, and we know that the next Xbox will have back compat, and it's probably going to have a similar thing where you can throw an Xbox One game in the disk drive, an Xbox 360 game in the disk drive, an Xbox game in the disk drive, and have access to that game. With the Xbox One games, it might be native, you know, not this like download a copy from the cloud and then the DRM is just checked with the disk. Doesn't really matter how that works as long as it works. But what if you find all these really good old games on sale, these Xbox One, 360 Xbox games, they're all in back compat, you can play them, and you don't have a disk drive, you know, you're boned. You're stuck with what's digital. A lot of people go digital, but I don't think everyone goes purely digital. They still have a couple discs lying around, or if they see a really good deal, you know, they'll go out and buy that one. So look, to wrap that up, I don't think more than one SKU is a good idea. Just that's my opinion on it. They just need to make the one box, and like, that's it. The streaming app will be a whole separate thing. As for a couple other things I think that'll be in the box, something that I think is a really good idea is some kind of hybrid hard drive in the console. Like a hybrid drive itself, or 2 separate drives. When it comes to solid state drives, I think they're still going to be too expensive to put like a full, even like a full terabyte of a solid state drive is just going to be too much. And then I think for next gen too, like 1 terabyte is like barely cutting it for the X right now. Like, we're going to have to see 2 minimum, probably something even higher than that. But for solid state drives, that's going to be way too expensive. That's going to jack up the price of this box like crazy. So I think something that would be good is, like with my laptop, I have a small solid state drive, 128 gigs, and the operating system runs off of that. And I install some programs to that too. Loads super fast, you know? I mean, anyone who uses solid state knows how quick that sucker loads. So I think something that would be good is throwing a small 128 gigabyte SSD into the console, and then or maybe even if they can get something smaller than that, whatever they need to fit the operating system and system updates onto that, that's where they put that. You're gonna have a console that boots up as quick as your phone. You turn your phone on in, you know, less than 5 seconds from a cold start. We're not talking about like it was already ready to go like with the quick start right now. We're talking that it was fully powered off, and boom, that sucker's on. And then with quick start, We're talking about like you hit the power button, and as soon as you hit the power button, your screen is on. Like we're not even a second of time. Like that would be good. That would be good. And then just throw a big ass hard drive in there, 2 terabyte, 3 terabyte, 4 terabyte hard drive into that sucker. I don't know if we're gonna get as high as 4 and 5. I don't know what the prices for hard drive space is gonna be like by then, but 2. We need 2 at a minimum for this next gen hardware. And another thing too, if they can get a little bit bigger SSD in there, like what is it, like 256? They might be able to develop some kind of solution to where your box knows what games you play most at the time, and they start automatically switching your games around, loading them onto the SSD first. So if you're playing a lot of one game and your console recognizes that, it'll throw that over to your SSD, little intelligent storage thing there, and that game that you play most often is just gonna load, and if that switches later, your console will recognize that, and it'll kind of switch these things around in the background for you, making it nice and easy. The other thing is RAM. I think with the next consoles and 4K being so big, right now the dash is actually at a 1080p resolution, and the reason for that is because they don't want to use too much of the RAM to have 4K assets for the dash. They want that extra power for developers to be able to use to make their games better, and I get that right now. That's important. They're doing what they can with this limited box. In the future design though, I think that a 4K screen, they're gonna need it to make it look beautiful. We can't go into this 4K future with 1080p assets on a dashboard again, unless they actually have a 1080p option with 1080p assets. That's a whole different thing. But more RAM. We're talking 16 gigs at a minimum. I think it's probably going to be some weird number though, like how it is now, like where we have 12, which is usually not a configuration you'll see in a PC. We're going to get something like 18 gigs of RAM, 19 gigs of RAM, where like 16 gigs is accessible to developers, and then that extra 2, extra 3, 4, whatever it is offloaded to system resources. So I think that's going to be important. So to wrap up, I think we're going to see some interesting technology in this new box. I also think we might see another like full breakdown of what's in this box. I think Microsoft really loved sending the X over to Digital Foundry and having them analyze it and pretty much do this free press on the tech. It was a really cool thing, and I think they might do that again. It's something that really attracted a lot of the hardcore to see like what is in this box and how technologically advanced it is and how much power it actually has. And that's a cool little like bone to throw to the hardcore, like the hardware heads out there. So look, to wrap up, I think there's only going to be one SKU. I entertained the idea of multiple SKUs for a little bit there, but I really don't think those are a good idea. And some kind of SSD or even like a hybrid drive would be great. We're going to see a lot more RAM. I don't even want to speculate on, what the CPU is going to be like, what the GPU is going to be like. Like, we just know it's going to be better. We know whatever it is, it's going to have to handle 4K 60 more often than not. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm on Twitter now, at C32 Gaming, if you want to go check that out. Give me a like, follow, and subscribe, if you liked it. And we'll be back soon. This is C32 Gaming signing out.